I have been a WWE viewer since the summer of 2000, and I can confidently say that WWE has never been in worse shape from a creative standpoint. I have watched programming from multiple different eras, and even other promotions, and I can confidently say, this is the worst structured creative process WWE has ever faced. The product today is very uneventful, and multiple different eras far surpass it when it comes to telling compelling stories and cultivating characters. Not even Vince McMahon has ever put on a product so void of direction and entertainment. Yes, Vince was getting old. Yes, Vince made bad decisions in the past. Yes, Vince lost his touch. But for the longest time, he's the reason why this company has thrived and why many wrestling fans still have something to watch every week. Without Vince, wrestling would be as popular today as barrel jumping. He knew how this company was going to make money. His process worked. The product stops being watchable when you change the process. There was nothing wrong with the process itself. Why fix what isn't broken? What should have been done was for Triple H to use Vince's process better than Vince. Triple H finds it more worthwhile to follow Tony Khan's process and book wrestling and pandering to wrestling marks and shift away from entertainment for a broad audience. And here this guy every week has the gall to call himself a god, and how everything he touches turns to gold. Just like Tony Khan. This is going to be a mistake. So in this video, I'll go over many ridiculous decisions under the tutelage of Triple H. So let's get this going. The fans. Let's start with the live fans. I don't have a problem with the live fans if they enjoy the product. But they act like a mindless cult, with their constant singing and chanting. This is awesome, holy shit, you deserve it every single week, every single match, every single performer. It ruins the atmosphere and it has altered pushes for the worst. It's great to have a lively crowd. But they have no business dictating the show's direction. I feel as if Triple H doesn't want to entertain the fans, but rather he wants the fans to entertain him. So while I don't blame the fans for liking the product, I blame Triple H for not attempting to focus on the product because of it, and fostering this cult-like mentality. Because this isn't the kind of fan base you want to primarily cater to. You want broad audiences and casual markets. Not 99% middle-aged men. Because after all these men grow tired of the product or pass on, who is left? Gunther. I used to like Gunther, but one interview turned that around 180 degrees. He hates Vince's booking because he wouldn't book matches long enough on TV. He's basically booking his own character, if you even call it a character, and books himself to have 10 to 20 minutes long matches on TV. You bring back the King of the Ring, and have him win it, only to bury it on live TV. So he wants to hoard the ring all to himself, wants to hoard championships all to himself, and thinks people want to pay to see him wrestle Xavier Woods for 17 minutes. I'd rather sit in church for 17 minutes. So he's essentially an egotist that wants to benefit himself at the expense of the other talent and the viewers. I don't understand why he's worth his own creative privileges like he's Ric Flair. Gunther is not even 10% the value of a Ric Flair. He just wastes everybody's time. Triple H just thinks he is Santa Claus giving certain talents everything he or she wants. Gunther isn't the only example here. Milquetoast characters. Triple H doesn't know how to cultivate characters. If I were to have a conversation with you in the high school cafeteria, I could tell you all about Steve Austin, The Rock, The Undertaker, Mankind, the Hardy Boys. I could tell you each one of their personalities, archetypes, goals, interests, and so much more. These were larger-than-life stars that had exposure even without social media. Now if we were to talk about wrestlers today, what would you say? Who is J.D. McDonough? He's a wrestler. Who is Sami Zayn? He's a wrestler. Who is Zoe Stark? She's a wrestler. Who is Ilya Dragunov? He's a wrestler. Are you fucking kidding me? How would that make me excited to watch your product? And all of them have the same copy-paste promos about how they work hard, love to wrestle, and love the fans. These wrestlers need brands, personality, and direction. Here's a quote from Steve Austin after earning a #1 contendership after In Your House, Revenge of the Taker in 1997. "The thing that gets me is, I don't see why everyone's so happy, because none of you helped me do a damn thing. I did it by myself." Characters like Steve Austin wouldn't exist today in Triple H's WWE. Uninspiring video packages. Cody Rhodes and AJ Styles' video package on SmackDown before Clash of the Castle was so lackluster and uninspiring. How can you put together a video package with just 2 segments? How can Triple H have the balls to tell us this is the greatest era in the history of the company and then put together such dull garbage like that? Another questionable decision was to give the women's tag team title picture a video package when Alba Fyre and Illa Dawn have hardly ever interacted with Bianca Belair and Jade Cargill. 9 times out of 10, Bianca and Jade have done nothing aside from being in a backstage segment where they complement one another. That's all they do. Bianca Belair and Jade Cargill. This is special treatment on full display. I already made videos on both of them. Both of them were handed a whole lot without having to prove anything. They didn't have to refine their technical abilities, they didn't have to refine their promo abilities. Triple H deems them good enough the way they are, and shoving them down people's throats has not garnered the buzz he's been expecting. How do they get to keep their names, but Casey Catanzaro doesn't? Somebody who was actually a celebrity and garnered 4 times the publicity outside of WWE than Jade Cargill has inside the WWE. Damage control. This faction's only purpose was to make Bayley happy. That's it. Bayley wanted to be in a faction with her real-life friends, she wanted to be in feuds with Trish Stratus and Lita, she wanted to be in War Games on the main roster, and she wanted to win the Royal Rumble. Did that tell a story? Oh, you bet it did. Just not one that's on TV. It's like, why are these 3 women in a group together and what makes them so dangerous to poor precious Bianca? None of these questions were answered. Your goal isn't to please Bayley, your goal is to put on an entertaining product. The Royal Rumble is supposed to be a storytelling tool, not some achievement award for a hard-working wrestler. Matches are too long. Matches need to be shorter. Over 10 minutes is too long for matches on TV. Simply because you've hardly remembered what happened in the match after you've watched it. So it's just a waste of time. The King and Queen of the Ring tournaments took away far too much time that otherwise could have gone to cultivate other talent with promos and segments. And then Triple H revealed these tournaments were nothing more than #1 contenders tournaments. Why did all that require so much time? Vince was able to book King of the Ring like a pro. You only need 3 minutes per match, you can hold a tournament and also book other storylines surrounding it as well. It's not that hard to manage. Kicking out of finishers. What is the purpose of a finishing move, Triple H? It's supposed to finish the match. These wrestlers today devalue finishers. Randy Orton keeps saying how the RKO is the 3 most dangerous letters, and people always kick out after an RKO. Kevin Owens will get hit with 2 crossroads and reverse a 3rd one, and will act like nothing happened to him. Kicking out of finishers is ridiculous. It's better to just avoid the finisher, or reverse the finisher. Why not do that instead? What good does it do to bury a finisher? While on the topic of kicking out of finishers, I also recall Liv Morgan getting powerbombed by Sonya Deville through a pile of chairs and she kicked out from that. Foreign languages. Everyone on WWE programming should speak English. Leave the foreign languages to the translators. During one promo before the Royal Rumble, I remember Bobby Lashley was talking to Santos Escobar, and Escobar replied back in Spanish. What did he say? Unless you knew Spanish, you would never find out. I get that international wrestlers are more comfortable talking in their own languages. But if your audience doesn't know your language, then how can you tell a story? If you can speak English, yet you still speak in a foreign language, you're not doing anybody any favors. Why does Triple H allow this? Rhea vs Tozawa. This was a train wreck that only depreciated Akira Tozawa. Rhea challenged Tozawa to a match. And then when the match takes place, Rhea uses her gender as some invisible force field and Tozawa is afraid to hit her. No. Hit her. She challenged you. Hit her. Tozawa shouldn't have had any disadvantages. And the optics involving Rhea just make no sense. Rhea can manhandle Carlito, but soon after she'll be getting attacked by Liv Morgan. Why did she even compete in the Women's Royal Rumble if she could simply dominate the Men's Royal Rumble? Removing weight barriers. One of the most ridiculous things you can see in a WWE match nowadays is having smaller guys pick up larger guys like they were feathers. I don't understand this decision. It should be very difficult for somebody like Chad Gable to German suplex Braun Strowman. If Chad Gable can German suplex Braun Strowman, then Zelina Vega could German suplex Braun Strowman. And if Zelina Vega could German suplex Braun Strowman, then Braun Strowman must not be that strong. Braun Strowman must not be that heavy. Guys like Chris Benoit and Kurt Angle would German suplex the Big Show, and they made it look like it was a momentous feat and as if a great amount of strength was needed to lift Big Show off the ground. We also get small guys like Ilya Dragunov big booting Braun Breaker and he goes flying over the announcer table like he's Hornswoggle. I can hardly stand Ilya Dragunov. He thinks he is Goldberg. He is not Goldberg. With how much offense he gets in his matches, he could destroy guys like Big Show, Kane, and The Undertaker. Is that what people want? We have Braun Breaker, who's a powerhouse, feels he need to stop him with a large office chair. We need Davids and Goliaths. You're not Goliath, dude. Michael Cole. I can't stand Michael Cole. He is out of control. I get he's a play-by-play, and his job is to talk a lot. He is too obnoxious. He should just be a guy that does his job. That's all he has to be. But no. He can't even do that because he's too obsessed over Valhalla's headdress, or he's too busy calling the refs Dracula or boasting about how long he's been around. Nobody cares. It feels like he has bombastic over-the-top reactions for heels that appear at ringside, such as Dominic Mysterio or Logan Paul. He has a bigger beef against these guys than the wrestlers themselves. He ought to actually take matters into his own hands and put a stop to these evil men. Michael Cole should have faced Dominic at WrestleMania. He had more on-screen history with Dominic over the past year than Ray has. And then at Clash at the Castle pre-show, he talks down at Chelsea Green. Why is he acting like a snark in front of Chelsea Green? Chelsea Green is the heel. You need to let her be the heel. If you try to one-up her, by trying to be a bigger heel than her, you just bury her character. If your goal is to signify how much of a diva Chelsea is, you let her be that diva, you don't retaliate. The LWO. I know this is a running theme with factions today, but the LWO definitely deserve a mention, because they've done nothing for 2 years. They don't compete for titles, they don't feud with anybody. Their only goal is to represent Latinos, and then have members turn heel and leave. If I were a Hispanic wrestler on the main roster, why would I want to be associated with this group? Why would I want to be part of some 30-year-old dead brand and not have my own brand? Why would I want to be pigeonholed to this group of Hispanic wrestlers rather than actually be on my own and get storylines? Vince was able to give direction to lone Hispanic talent back in the day like Rey, Carlito, Eddie, Alberto Del Rio, Chavo, Pedro Morales, even Tito Santana had much more direction than the LWO. The Bloodline. Roman Reigns is the glue that holds the Bloodline together. If Roman isn't there, what is the point of this stable? It's Solo Sikoa, and 2 wrestlers from the Taku family trees, which sound like 2 Hanna-Barbera characters, Tama Tonga and Tonga Loa. This group honestly should have disbanded once Roman Reigns lost his title, because what is their goal now? Harassing Kevin Owens? Sikoa beat John Cena at Crown Jewel last year. With that kind of booking, he should be feuding against Cody for the WWE title, not wasting time on Kevin Owens. Paul Heyman is especially useless. He's ringside during each match and does absolutely nothing like a cardboard cutout. Why have him out there, if he doesn't even play a role in the match? Solo should be a single star and Heyman should actually be a factor in his matches. And then have the Tongan Stars just be a tag team rather than acting like life support for this faction. Jacob Fatu's booking makes no sense. First he beats SmackDown's top 3 babyfaces all at the same time, and then he nearly gets his ass kicked by Johnny Gargano. Then he wins the tag titles with Tama Tonga, and then he's forced to give his title to Tanga Loa? Fatu won the belt. Tama didn't earn it, since we wasn't even in the match. Nothing about this faction makes any sense. Samantha Irvin. We get it. She's a good announcer, but she is nails on chalkboard annoying. Every time she has to announce a particular wrestler like Chelsea Green or Ludwig Kaiser, she sounds like an SNL sketch. Just like Michael Cole, you only need to do your job. We don't care how you and others enjoy the smell of your own stink. Howard Finkel was the best, and Samantha will never even come close, especially when she sounds like a 4-year-old screaming into your ear. She is if Aubrey Edwards were a ring announcer. The brand split. There is no point to a brand split. When talents are free to come and go as they please, you might as well not have a brand split and combine the creative teams. WWE has managed to book 2 shows with one creative team before, ever since SmackDown was first created. What is honestly stopping Triple H from just ending the brand split? There aren't any obligations from UFC, or cable networks or sponsors to have one. WWE Draft. The WWE Draft this year has made no sense. Bianca Belair was the first superstar to get drafted to SmackDown, and Jey Uso was the very first talent to get drafted to Raw. And the third pick was Carmelo Hayes, who hasn't done anything so far on the main roster. On the second night, the top picks consisted of Jade Cargill, Damage Control, and Bobby Lashley. All this tells me is that Triple H doesn't plan. He just thinks of storylines and angles on the fly with no long-term planning or milestones. When WWE drafts occurred under McMahon's leadership, you had no questions about who was drafted in what order. The main eventers went first. Friendly rivalries. Friendly rivalries are monotonous to watch. Especially at Bash in Berlin. Kevin Owens and Cody Rhodes had a match where nothing villainous happened. Then, Gunther and Randy Orton shook hands after their match. Nobody should want to see everyone get along. What's the point of watching pro wrestling if we didn't see conflict and everyone got along? All stories, no matter what format they're in, have conflict. It's so weird for Triple H to not want conflict, as if he truly thinks wrestling is a sport. It's not a sport. Letting main roster talent work other shows. There are good reasons why Vince wouldn't allow main roster talent to work other shows. The number one reason is that there's a great risk they can get injured without even being within your control. Shotzi got injured in NXT, which is a shame because I want to see Shotzi on TV. Triple H lost a key player on his main roster when he 1000% didn't need to. And that didn't even have to happen if Triple H could simply manage his rosters better. Triple H also lets talent work TNA in Japan and indie events around WrestleMania. What is the reward? What do you gain by doing this? There is far bigger risk than there is reward. Firing Jimmy Smith, then Kevin Patrick. Jimmy Smith was fired after an episode of Raw after he said Johnny Gargano wasn't good. He was replaced by Kevin Patrick, who wasn't fit for the role. And then a year after he was put in the role, he too got fired. So, Triple H's master plan with cultivating play-by-play announcers is to Step 1, fire Jimmy Smith, Step 2, replace him with Kevin Patrick, Step 3, replace him with Michael Cole. Poor roster management. You're doing something wrong if you spend a fortune to bring back all this talent only to give them no opportunities to shine. Triple H wants 100 people on the main roster, yet he also wants 20-minute matches and 5 matches per PLE. How is anyone supposed to cultivate with these kinds of conditions? The only reason you would want to do this is if you don't care about storytelling, and you just want to play war with Tony Khan. So you're just wasting money on talent that can't help business. Vince released Braun Strowman simply because he had a giant contract and Vince felt it wasn't worth paying him anymore. And now that Triple H brought him back, what has he done since then? Factions in general. Vince had a bunch of different factions in the past 40 years. When Vince created a faction, this faction would have a clear goal in mind. Whether it be to help the leader become a champion, to serve as a makeshift authority figure, or to simply make a wrestler's influence stronger. Triple H creates factions for the sole purpose of giving talent a spot on the roster. They're just there to occupy space. Nothing more. JD McDonough, Dragon Lee, Dexter Lumis, Tama Tonga, and Tonga Loa, all they're meant to do is occupy space. Factions are more difficult to book compared to individuals. And it's no wonder why Triple H is having a hard time booking all of them. 30-minute main events. 75% of the time, the main events today on Raw and SmackDown are skippable. You can turn the show off or take a shower and not even miss a major event at the end of the show. And with matches as long as they are, why would you even want to sit through it all? If you ever wanted to see the end of the show, you could just change the channel until 9:58 or 10:58, depending on if you're watching Raw or SmackDown. Having a long main event creates more problems than it solves. In the time you have this match, you could have an additional segment followed by a shorter main event. The Royal Rumble. I used to look forward to the Royal Rumble every year. When Vince was in charge, you'd get a lot of exciting things that happened within the match that would tell stories and set up rivalries and such. But these last two Royal Rumbles were not fun to watch, because nothing exciting ever happens. There are no memorable moments, and there is no room for anyone to get a spotlight. The ring fills up with about 20 people and wrestlers are just tossed out with no rhyme or reason. Dollar store jewelry. The fact that we have main event talent trying to gain possession of a pepper necklace or a beaded bracelet goes to show how creatively bankrupt WWE has become. Roman Reigns and CM Punk should be above trying to desperately get back materialistic objects. It doesn't make sense for Roman to suddenly want this Ulafala. After all this time we're told he's the tribal chief no matter what. All this tells me is that they didn't even have a long-term plan for when Roman came back to address the bloodline. It's insulting our intelligence. Objects don't make people. And then that stupid bracelet that should never be a concern to somebody like CM Punk. So because Drew stole it from him, it's an insult to his wife and dog? Why should I care? The Nia Jax/Becky Lynch storyline. Another instance of WWE's genius writers not being able to think of a better reason for two wrestlers to have a feud. The whole basis of Nia Jax and Becky Lynch feuding in 2023 was because of an accident that happened in 2018, in which Nia broke Becky's nose by accident. You pay these writers a lot of money only for them to look backward rather than forward. I'd rather have Nia and Becky just brawl in the ring over talking about Becky's broken nose from 5 years ago. Austin Theory's cash in. Austin Theory goes from Mr. Money in the Bank to being stuck at the hip indefinitely with Grayson Waller. I understand that giving the Money in the Bank briefcase to Theory was a Vince decision, but Triple H's job was to pick up where Vince left off, and he can't do that. Theory cashed in on a fucking mid-card title and lost, and he'd done nothing until he was paired with Grayson Waller, in which he just gets beat up during Grayson Waller effects segments. WWE Speed. This is one of the worst ideas for a WWE in-ring show I've heard. If you want to air 3-minute matches on X, that's fine. But then you give this show its own championship, and how do you give a championship to a show that only has one 3-minute match per week? And it's just as you expect, this champion just either defends his belt out of the blue or a tournament is booked to declare a #1 contender. What's the point? It makes no difference than just using a handful of wrestlers on a regular basis. They still air commercials about WWE Speed where Corey Graves calls it a game changer and I just roll my eyes. And you know Ricochet isn't signing a contract renewal, but you make him the champion anyway, and then you book him to get slammed onto a car before the match where he loses his Speed title has the chance to air? Dominic Mysterio. These fake boos are just awful. I understand the point of them is to show how hated Dominic is, but they're just a waste of time and they stop Dominic from cutting a promo. Nobody is convinced that these boos drown out Dominic's voice. He just interrupts himself while the production crew plays artificial crowd noise. After you do this for the 63rd time, people will start to realize how fake and phony this is. Throwaway Ross and SmackDowns. There is absolutely no point in watching the go-home episodes of Ross and SmackDowns anymore. The go-home Raw and SmackDown, combined with the 2 whole pre-shows covering a measly 5-match card, is a big fat waste of time. The episodes of Raw and SmackDown before these PLEs do very little to build towards the PLE itself. Instead, they consist of matches with wrestlers that have no involvement with the PLE. Many can argue that these would have been matches on the PLE had there been room for them. But you can certainly do something about that. There's no reason you can't have 7 matches in a 3-hour event. Speaking of Michin, she is desperate to get in Triple H's good graces so that she can get booked more. She acknowledges how long she has to wait to get an opportunity, yet still kisses his ass saying he wouldn't drop the ball with her. Ma'am, Triple H is the one that created these problems for you to begin with. Vince could at least book 9 women to a feud if he felt it was necessary. Cody Rhodes. Cody has to be one of the worst world champions in modern history. Nothing ever happens to him, he hardly ever wrestles on TV, his promos are boring, his feuds are boring, his character is the blandest flavor of vanilla to exist, and there's nothing at all to look forward to. Having him feud with Randy Orton or the Bloodline doesn't pique my interest. Because Triple H can't bother to make anybody remotely entertaining. Cody, he had that major pec injury, he had 2 years to finish his story, and this is what they do with it. Think of some of the worst wrestlers to hold the WWE title. The Great Khali, Jinder Mahal, Alberto Del Rio, Kofi Kingston, Big E, they had far more material than Cody has now. And I can't imagine that's it, but it's a whole lot. And Triple H could just easily fix this all if he felt like it. All he has to do is stop trying to be Tony Khan Jr. and start booking like Vince. He can start by doing 3 simple things. Firstly, he needs to hire Hollywood writers again. Why? Because all this time they're what has been turning WWE's wheels when it comes to creative ideas. Triple H can still observe everything and filter good and bad ideas, but 2 heads, 3 heads, 8 heads are better than 1. Secondly, we need larger-than-life characters. Tell each person on the roster they have a month to come up with their own gimmick. That means their personality, their traits, their goals, and any possible storylines they want with this gimmick. Give them an entire form to fill out, and if they can't fill it out, the creative team should choose a gimmick for them. Because we need characters that can be marketed beyond the hardcore marks. Enough of these generic, black coffee wrestlers that all cut the same copy-paste promos every week. Finally, stop booking boring matches. 3-minute matches can be entertaining and have pivotal moments. This will allow you to showcase more of your roster every week. Every segment needs to be must-see like in the Attitude Era, and this way, you have plenty of fresh ideas for storylines and you have more people getting over in a given month than what you are allowing. This all should not be hard to ask for. The hardcore marks are going to watch either way. So why limit your reach? I don't care how much these marks are willing to spend on your overpriced tickets,